Have you ever had one of those mornings where everything feels like it's falling perfectly into place until it doesn't? That was Maya Daniels on a cold December morning, standing just inside the entrance of O'Hare International Airport. The air outside was thick with fog, the kind that makes you feel like you're stepping into a dream or a warning. She tugged her flight case behind her, heels clicking on the polished floor as the terminal lights flickered above. To anyone watching, she looked calm, focused, ready. But inside, Maya was holding her breath. She was 37 years old, a decorated former military pilot with over 15,000 hours in the air. Maya had flown across almost every continent. Antarctica was the only place left unchecked, and today, after years of climbing, grinding, and pushing through walls she didn't build, she was stepping into a new chapter. Senior captain at Meridian Airlines, one of the most prestigious and, let's be honest, most conservative airlines in the country. It wasn't just a new job, it was a seat at the table. She checked her watch. 5:17 a.m. She had 13 minutes before the briefing for Flight MA 27 to San Francisco. Just enough time to grab some coffee, breathe, and settle into the day. That's when it hit her, the feeling. Not nerves, not fear, just different. As she approached the crew lounge, the door swung open, releasing a warm wave of coffee, laughter, and the low hum of early morning chatter. Maya stepped inside, and instantly the energy in the room shifted. The kind of pause that's so slight, most people would miss it. But not Maya. Not when you've been the only one in the room for most of your career. You see, less than 1% of commercial airline pilots in the US are black women. Maya had always known the odds, but that never stopped her. She wasn't here to fit in. She was here because she earned it. A man in his 50s stepped up beside her at the coffee station. Salt and pepper hair. 4 gold stripes. He extended his hand. "You must be Captain Daniels," he said. "I'm Richard Whitmore. I'll be your check captain these next few weeks." Maya met his handshake firmly, forcing a smile. "Good to meet you, Captain Whitmore. I've been reviewing Meridian's SFO approach protocols, expecting some turbulence over the Rockies, but nothing outside the usual." "Call me Richard," he said. But the smile never reached his eyes. He looked her over, brief, calculated. "The crew is in briefing room C. I'll meet you there in 5. He turned and walked away. And Maya felt it. That old familiar tension. Like walking into a cockpit where someone's already decided you don't belong. She'd seen that look before. The one that says, "I'm waiting for you to mess up." Maya took a breath, poured herself a cup of coffee, and stirred in a splash of cream. As the spoon clinked the cup, she caught her reflection in the shiny metal of the coffee urn. And just for a second she saw more than herself. She saw her father, his voice echoing in her mind. "You'll have to be twice as good to get half as far." He'd said that to her when she got her license at 19. He'd said it again when she graduated top of her class at the Air Force Academy. And again before her first deployment. She'd lived by those words. The briefing room was already buzzing when she walked in. 6 flight attendants and her co-pilot for the day, First Officer James Chen, was seated around the table. James stood as she entered, giving her a genuine smile. "Captain Daniels, heard great things, looking forward to flying with you." Before she could respond, the door opened again. 2 men entered, Thomas Barrett, Director of Operations, and Richard Whitmore. Barrett didn't even look at her. He cleared his throat. "Change of plans. Captain Whitmore will be taking command of Flight 207. Captain Daniels, we need you to wait outside." The room went still. It was like someone hit mute on reality. Maya blinked. "Excuse me, we're reassigning you. Please wait in the hall." She looked around. Every eye was on her. The heat rose in her chest. "I was scheduled for this flight weeks ago." Barrett finally looked at her, then glanced at Richard before speaking. "It's a matter of experience. SFO is a tough approach. Given your unfamiliarity with Meridian's protocols, with all due respect," Maya cut in, I've flown into SFO 73 times in the past 10 years. I'm well versed in approach patterns and emergency contingencies. My qualifications were reviewed thoroughly during onboarding. His tone hardened. This isn't up for discussion. Please wait outside. And just like that, the room told her what it thought. Not just of her, but of what she represented. Maya looked at James. He looked back, clearly uncomfortable. She could see the silent apology in his eyes. She could have pushed, demanded, but she'd been in this game long enough to know when to play the long game. So she nodded, left her flight plan on the table, and walked out. The hallway was quiet, cold. She leaned back against the wall and breathed. The sting wasn't just professional, it was personal. Not her first time being sidelined, but something about this was different. It wasn't ignorance. 10 minutes later, the door cracked open. James slipped out, looking guilty. "I'm sorry," he said softly. "That was crap. What did they say?" Maya asked, her voice calm. "They said it's standard procedure for new captains. But I've been here 3 years, seen 4 new captains come through. None of them were pulled from their first flight." Maya nodded slowly. "Thanks for telling me." "There's more," James said. "They've assigned you to shadow Flight 422 to Seattle. Said it's to get you acclimated. But the captain, it's Harold Wilson." Maya's eyes narrowed. She'd never met Harold Wilson, but his reputation was loud. Senior-most captain at Meridian. Old school, vocal about not needing diversity hires in the cockpit. One of those. She nodded again, slower this time. "Captain," James added, "if you want to file a complaint, I'll back you up." Maya appreciated that. She did, but she also knew how this worked. Filing a complaint on day 1. She'd be branded difficult. And difficult doesn't fly. "Let me handle Flight 422, she said. "But thank you, James." Not everyone would say anything. He gave her a small, understanding smile. "Good luck with Wilson. He's old-fashioned." Maya chuckled under her breath. "I've dealt with old-fashioned." Her phone buzzed in her pocket. A text from her younger sister, "Zoe, knock him dead on your first day, sis. So proud of you." Maya stared at it, heart full and heavy. She typed back a quick reply. "All good here. Tell you about it tonight." And with that, she tucked the phone away. It was time to fly, even if it wasn't the way she'd planned. It was intent. Flight 422 to Seattle wasn't supposed to be a battleground. But that's what it felt like from the moment Maya stepped on board. Captain Harold Wilson didn't say hello, didn't make eye contact, didn't even nod in acknowledgement when she walked into the cockpit. He just kept reviewing his paperwork as if she were invisible. She stood quietly for a moment, waiting for some kind of instruction. None came. So she sat in the jump seat behind the captain and first officer, Peter Lawson, a young man who looked like he'd rather be anywhere else. He gave her a brief glance, something between empathy and fear, before focusing on his checklist. Maya said nothing. She didn't need to. She'd learned long ago that in some cockpits, silence was survival. As they taxied, Wilson finally broke it. "I don't know what kind of outfit you came from, Captain Daniels," he said, still not turning around. "But at Meridian, we do things by the book. No shortcuts, no improvisations." The implication was sharp, obvious. He didn't think she could follow the rules. He assumed she'd cut corners, that her presence was a diversity PR stunt, not the result of decades of sweat, sacrifice, and excellence. "I understand," Maya replied evenly. "Standardization is the foundation of safety." Wilson didn't respond, just grunted, like he was disappointed she didn't take the bait. The flight to Seattle was short, just under 2 hours, but felt infinitely longer. Wilson narrated every step of the flight, like she was a cadet fresh out of training. Each word soaked in condescension, each instruction delivered as if she'd never touched a yoke. She swallowed it all, let it roll off her. Because this wasn't about ego. This was about observation, about understanding the game being played and planning her next move. Then something happened. During the descent into SeaTac, Wilson entered the wrong frequency for approach control. A small mistake, but one that could have snowballed if the airspace had been crowded. Peter didn't say anything. Maya wasn't sure if he hadn't noticed or if he was just too intimidated. But she had to say something. "Captain," she said calmly, "I believe Seattle approach is on 28.35 today. Not 124.75. The cockpit went silent. Wilson's shoulders tensed. He double-checked the chart, then quietly adjusted the frequency. "That's correct," he muttered. "Thank you, Captain Daniels." The words felt like they cost him everything. As they taxied to the gate, he surprised her again. "You have a good eye," he said, still not looking at her. Most wouldn't have caught that. "Thank you, sir." He paused, then added, with a little more bite, "Don't misunderstand. One good catch doesn't make you Meridian material. This airline has standards, traditions. Not everyone fits." Maya's jaw tightened, but her voice remained calm. "With respect, Captain, traditions evolve. They have to." That got his attention. He turned, blue eyes hard as steel. "Not at Meridian, they don't." Message received. The rest of that week became a kind of purgatory. Every day, Maya was assigned to shadow a new captain. Every one of them a man. Every one of them part of the same old guard that saw her presence as a threat, not a promise. They passed her off like a burden. She was assigned the worst routes, had the shortest rest windows between flights, and every word of her performance was picked apart like she was a student, not a peer. But Maya took notes, mental ones, emotional ones, paper ones, every slight, every deviation, every crack in the system, because this wasn't just about her anymore. It never really had been. That evening, back in her temporary apartment in Chicago, Maya sat on the couch with a glass of wine in hand and a laptop balanced on her knees. Her sister Zoe filled the screen of her tablet in a video call, eyes wide, voice sharp. They did what? Zoe was a lawyer, a damn good one. And when Maya told her about the reassignment, the silent hazing, the way they tried to humiliate her from day one, Zoe's rage hit the ceiling. That's textbook discrimination. You could sue them into oblivion. And then what? Maya sighed. Be known as the black woman who sued her way into the cockpit. I'd never have the crew's trust. Zoe frowned. So what, you're just going to take it? I didn't say that. Her voice had steel in it now. Quiet, but unshakable. I said I'm not suing. Not yet. There are other ways to fight. Zoe leaned in. What's your plan? Maya took a slow sip, eyes narrowing. I need to understand what I'm dealing with. This isn't just a few old dinosaurs clinging to power. This feels organized, systemic. I need to know how deep it goes. Zoe nodded. Be careful, sis. These corporate types protect their own. I know. But I didn't come this far just to get shoved out the door. That night, sleep didn't come easy. So Maya did what she always did when she couldn't rest. She researched. She pulled up everything she could find on Meridian Airlines. Articles, internal press releases, FAA reports, Glassdoor reviews. Founded in 1967. Once a regional carrier. Now a major player with international roots. Safety record, clean on paper, but oddly unremarkable. Executive team, all white, all male. Board of directors, only 2 women, 0 people of color. Then came the employee reviews. From white male employees, glowing. From women and employees of color, not so much. Old boy network, hard to speak up, not friendly to newcomers. Inclusive on paper, not in practice. But nothing specific, just shadows, whispers. She dug deeper. 3 lawsuits in the last decade. All settled quietly. 2 by female flight attendants. 1 by a Hispanic ground crew supervisor. And then, just as she was about to close the browser, something caught her eye. An article buried. Meridian Airlines faces FAA scrutiny over maintenance logs dated 8 months ago. Just a brief mention that the FAA had launched a routine review of Meridian's maintenance documentation after finding minor inconsistencies. That might mean nothing. All airlines get reviewed. but Maya's gut told her otherwise. Meridian had recently expanded their international operations. More planes, more flights, tighter turnaround. That meant pressure. That meant risk. She bookmarked the article. Something to keep an eye on. The next morning, she shadowed another flight, this time to Denver. The captain was Andrew Peterson, and he was different, cordial, quiet, maybe even a little sympathetic. Mid-flight, he glanced at her. "For what it's worth," he said quietly, "not all of us agree with how you're being treated." Maya studied him. "But you're not speaking up either." Peterson shifted in his seat. "It's complicated. Meridian is traditional." There was that word again. Traditional. It covered everything from subtle bias to outright injustice. Maya raised an eyebrow. "Seems like that word covers a lot of sins." Peterson sighed. "Watch yourself around Barrett and Wilson. They've been friends for over 30 years. Barrett protects his people. No matter what, she asked. His face changed. Just for a second. Something flashed unease? Guilt? "I didn't say that. You didn't have to," Maya replied. They flew the rest of the way in silence. That evening, she visited the maintenance hangar between flights. "Just learning the ropes," she said. "Just observing protocols," she said. Most of the crew kept their distance. Some were polite but stiff. But one technician, an older black man named Marcus Jefferson, opened up when she mentioned she grew up in Detroit. 23 years I've been keeping these birds in the air," Marcus said, inspecting an engine cowling. "Seen a lot of changes. Not all good." "How so?" He looked around, lowered his voice. "New management's been pushing harder. Faster turnarounds. Less time between flights. Some checks that used to be mandatory. Now they're left to our discretion." Maya stiffened. "Is that legal?" "Gray area," Marcus said. "They've got lawyers who make it sound kosher. But between us, I wouldn't put my family on some of these planes." Before she could press further, a supervisor appeared nearby. Marcus straightened, put on his professional face, and went back to work. But his words stayed with her. Less oversight, more pressure, just enough legality to slide by. Over the next 2 weeks, the pattern sharpened. Every flight she shadowed followed the same rhythm. She was minimized, questioned, sidelined. And every time she got closer to the mechanics, the documents, or the data, someone would show up watching, hovering. They were trying to make her quit, but they didn't know Maya Daniels. She was documenting everything, building a quiet web connecting allies like James, Lauren the flight attendant, Marcus in maintenance. She never said too much, just enough for them to know she saw them, heard them, believed them. She was waiting, watching. And then, 3 weeks in, it happened. She was assigned her first solo flight, Flight 889, a red-eye from Chicago to Las Vegas. James was her first officer, and from the second she stepped onto the tarmac, something felt off. Maya arrived early for Flight 889. It was a red-eye to Las Vegas, a route most captains avoided when they could. Long night hours, rowdy passengers, and very little glamour. But to Maya, it was something else, her chance. Her first official flight as captain for Meridian. Everything had to be perfect. She performed the walk-around with calm precision, eyes scanning every detail of the aircraft. The Boeing 737 sat gleaming under floodlights, but Maya had learned long ago not to be distracted by appearances. She pulled up the maintenance log. At first glance, it seemed fine routine signatures, checkboxes marked, flight ready. But as she flipped back through previous logs, something tugged at her. A sequence of dates didn't align. Specifically, the intake valve inspection and the scheduled routine maintenance check. There were gaps. Nothing explicit, but enough to raise an eyebrow. She called over the ground crew. "Hey," she said, holding the clipboard. "These inspection dates, something's off. Can you verify this?" One of the techs, a tired-looking guy in his 40s, shrugged. "It's within parameters. We've already cleared it. I'm not asking if it's cleared. I'm asking if the logs are accurate." He looked at her like she was being difficult. "We followed the checklist. Everything's good to go." But Maya wasn't convinced. She checked again. And again, something didn't sit right. "Captain," James approached, clearly picking up on the tension. "Dispatch is asking about our departure time. We're already behind by 15 minutes. Better we're 20 minutes late," Maya said, "than never arriving at all." She ordered a more thorough recheck of the aircraft, a move that, in the culture of on-time departures, was nearly sacrilegious. The extra inspection revealed nothing out of order, but Maya still filed a formal report with operations, documenting the discrepancies. The flight itself, smooth, no turbulence, no emergencies, no applause at landing, just a quiet, steady thrum of a flight completed safely. But Maya knew that wasn't the end of it. The next morning, back in Chicago, she was summoned to Thomas Barrett's office. The moment she stepped in, she could feel the energy shift. Barrett didn't offer a greeting. "Captain Daniels," he began, "I understand you delayed Flight 889 last night with an unscheduled inspection." Maya stayed calm. The maintenance logs had inconsistencies. FAA regulations require accurate documentation before departure. "Our ground crew cleared that aircraft," Barrett said, voice clipped. "You overruled them based on what?" "A feeling. Based on my 20 years of flight experience and the legal requirements under Title 14 of the Code of Federal Regulations," she replied. The intake valve logs didn't match the service records. Barrett's jaw tightened. "At Meridian, we value efficiency alongside safety. Delays cost us thousands. We need captains who understand that balance." Maya leaned forward slightly. "Are you asking me to ignore discrepancies in safety documentation? I'm asking you to trust the process. Our mechanics know these aircraft. We hired you to fly, not to play inspector." "I always exercise good judgment," Maya said, standing, "and for me, safety is the top of that list." Barrett didn't stop her as she turned to leave, but she knew she had crossed a line, and from now on the gloves were off. That night, Maya sat at her kitchen table, a growing mountain of notes, printouts, and screenshots spread before her. Every discrepancy, every delay, every voice lowered in fear, every colleague who whispered warnings. The picture was becoming disturbingly clear. Meridian Airlines was cutting corners, not in small ways, in ways that endangered lives, and worse, they were silencing anyone who questioned it. She picked up her phone. "Time to make a call." "Zoe," she said when her sister answered. "I'm here. I need your help, and I need you to connect me with that friend of yours at the FAA." There was a long pause. "You sure about this?" Maya looked at the stack of evidence in front of her. "I've never been more sure of anything." The next morning, she moved like a woman on a mission. She showed up early for her assigned flight to Boston, ready to fly. But she wasn't expecting what came next. She was halfway through reviewing the flight plan when Richard Whitmore walked into the room. "Captain Daniels," he said, smiling like a cat about to eat a canary, "there's been a change. I'll be taking command of this flight." "On whose authority?" Maya asked, keeping her tone neutral. "Executive operations. They feel the weather conditions require a more seasoned hand." Maya raised an eyebrow. "The weather is clear. Still, orders are orders. And my assignment?" "You've been reassigned to administrative tasks. Report to HR after the flight." Everyone in the room saw it. The calculated public humiliation. Some averted their eyes. Some watched silently. James, once again assigned as her first officer, gave her a look full of quiet frustration. She gathered her things. "Very well. Have a good flight." Out in the hallway, Maya ran into Lauren Kim, the senior flight attendant. "This isn't right," Lauren whispered, glancing around. "What they're doing to you, it's okay," Maya said gently. "Some battles are meant to be fought in the open." Lauren hesitated, then reached into her bag. "I have something you need to see." She pulled up her phone, showing Maya a series of photos. This was Flight 336 to Toronto last month. The cabin pressure valve had a visible crack. They cleared the flight anyway, because grounding it would have delayed other crew rotations. Maya's breath caught. Did anyone report this? Not officially. They shut it down before it went anywhere. But I documented it. I've been collecting things just in case. Why show me? Because I'm tired. And because you're the only one not afraid. Maya scribbled an email address on a scrap of paper. Send everything here. It's secure. And Lauren, thank you. Lauren nodded. And just like that, another piece of the puzzle clicked into place. That afternoon, Maya went to HR as instructed. The representative, barely out of grad school, looked like he wanted to disappear. We're placing you on administrative review, he mumbled, pending an evaluation of your cultural fit within the company. He handed her a temporary badge, one that didn't give her access to flight ops or the pilot lounges or even the hangar. She accepted it silently. They thought they were clipping her wings, but all they'd done was clear her calendar. Now she had time. By 4:30 p.m., Maya received 3 messages from James, "This is wrong. Let me know how I can help." From Marcus, "Need to talk." Maintenance Bay 3430. Important, and one unexpected from Peter Lawson, the nervous co-pilot from Seattle. Not all of us are like them. Some of us remember why we became pilots. She slipped out of HR, moving quickly toward the hangar. Her badge wouldn't grant her access, but Marcus was waiting at the side entrance. "I shouldn't be doing this," he said, glancing around. "But you need to know. Inside the vast hangar, beneath the belly of a grounded 737, Marcus pulled her aside. "They're falsifying records," he said flatly. "Not just stretching numbers, downgrading actual structural issues. Disabling internal flags so repairs don't get logged." Maya's pulse kicked up. "How widespread?" "At least 30% of the fleet," Marcus said. "They've got us signing off on jets that should be grounded. When someone refuses, they disappear, transferred, fired, or worse. Maya whispered. "There was a mechanic, Paul Decker, one of the best. Last year he flagged an issue with engine mounts on a 787. 3 weeks later, he fell from a maintenance platform, broke his back. They blamed him for negligence. Didn't even cover his medical bills." Maya closed her eyes. This was deeper than she feared. "Will you go on record?" Marcus shook his head, eyes full of fear. "I've got 3 kids. I can't be the face of this." "I understand," she said softly. "But if something happens," he pressed a small USB drive into her hand. "Logs, memos, flight records, everything I could get. Thank you," she said. He looked away. "Be careful. They're watching everyone." That night, Maya laid everything out. Lauren's photos, Marcus's data, Peter and James's messages, her own logs. She called Zoe. "We have enough," she said. "Send me everything. I'll get it to the FAA. One more thing," Maya added. "Look into Paul Decker's accident. I want to know if it really was negligence." Zoe didn't hesitate. On it, the next morning, Maya walked into headquarters calm, collected. Her new role as admin support was little more than paperwork in a beige conference room. She went through the motions, sat quietly, waited. At 2 p.m., the summons came. Executive conference room. Inside, Barrett, Whitmore, Wilson, 2 legal advisors. "Captain Daniels," Barrett began, "we become aware that you've accessed restricted areas and solicited information beyond your clearance level." Maya said nothing. "You've collected documents and communicated with outside entities. That violates your confidentiality agreement." Still, she remained silent. Barrett's eyes narrowed. "Do you have anything to say for yourself?" "Am I being fired?" she asked simply. "We're offering you a chance to resign," one of the lawyers cut in, "with a generous severance package provided you sign and da. And if I don't," Barrett's voice sharpened, "you'll be terminated for cause. Your record will reflect insubordination. No airline will touch you." Maya nodded slowly, then pulled a folder from her bag and placed it on the table. "Before I respond," she said, "you should know that at 9 this morning my attorney submitted a full report to the FAA. falsified records, safety violations, employee testimony. The room froze. At noon, she continued, the Chicago Tribune received the same information along with proof of retaliation. They're very interested in Paul Decker's story. Barrett's face turned ghost white. If anything happens to me, Maya added, there are instructions for every file to be sent to every aviation authority and news outlet globally. You're bluffing, Whitmore hissed. No, Maya said. This isn't bluffing. She met his eyes. This is accountability. The conference room was dead silent. You could hear the hum of the overhead lights, the shallow breathing, the sound of careers unraveling in real time. Barrett looked like he'd swallowed a brick. Whitmore clenched his jaw so hard you could see the muscle twitching. Wilson's face was a mask of disbelief and rage. Finally, one of the lawyers leaned over and whispered something urgently into Barrett's ear. Maya waited. Calm, still, steady as the sky on a windless day. After a long, tense pause, Barrett cleared his throat and tried to steady his voice. What do you want? Maya didn't hesitate. I want every aircraft with questionable maintenance records grounded immediately. I want an independent, third-party safety audit of your entire fleet. And I want written guarantees ironclad that no employee who participated in this investigation will face retaliation. Wilson slammed his fist against the table. That would bankrupt the company. Maya turned to him, her voice quiet but unshakable. As opposed to what happens when a plane goes down, because you look the other way. The other lawyer pulled Barrett aside again. A whispered conversation. Barrett's face lost more color with each passing second. They knew. It was over. After a moment, Barrett turned back to Maya, defeated. We'll need time, you have 1 hour, Maya interrupted. After that, the media goes wide. The next few days unfolded like an avalanche. Meridian Airlines issued an emergency statement that out of an abundance of caution, nearly 40% of its fleet would be grounded for a comprehensive internal review. The FAA launched a full-scale investigation. Inspectors swarmed every hub. Reporters camped outside the company's headquarters. Passenger trust, gone. Flights were cancelled. Stock prices tanked. Social media exploded. And Maya Daniels? She became the eye of the storm. The Chicago Tribune broke the story first. Then came CNN, MSNBC, The Washington Post. Suddenly, the woman who had been told to wait outside was everywhere praised as a whistleblower, a truth teller, a leader with guts. Employees started coming forward. Former crew members, mechanics, flight attendants, even former execs, all of them telling the same story. Meridian had cut corners, lied, pressured staff, covered up reports, and punished anyone who asked questions. Barrett, Whitmore, and Wilson were placed on administrative leave pending investigation. But everyone knew what that really meant. They were finished. 6 weeks later, Maya sat in a quiet cafe across the street from Meridian's now half-empty headquarters. Outside the building, workers were on ladders taking down the company's iconic logo. Bit by bit, the name Meridian disappeared from the sky. James slid into the seat across from her, 2 coffees in hand. It's official, he said. Atlantic Airways is buying out Meridian's assets. They're offering jobs to all certified flight staff except the execs under investigation, of course. Maya raised an eyebrow. And you, senior first officer, he said with a grin. I start next week. She smiled. That's good, you deserve that. You've got an office too, right? She nodded slowly. 3. Plus a consulting gig with the FAA. Even a book deal. James leaned back. And I'm thinking. The truth was, Maya was more exhausted than she realized. The stress, the backlash, the second-guessing, it had taken a toll. But she'd do it all again. Because it wasn't about her. The next day, the Justice Department announced criminal charges. Barrett, Whitmore, Wilson, reckless endangerment, fraud, obstruction of justice, real charges, real time, real accountability. Maya didn't celebrate. It wasn't that kind of victory. She sat with it. Let it settle into her bones. Not joy, not revenge, just the deep satisfaction of knowing the truth mattered. that it had finally been heard. At Atlantic Airways, Maya started fresh, but she wasn't anonymous anymore. She was Captain Maya Daniels, the woman who took on the system and won. Her first flight with Atlantic was symbolic in every way. Flight 207 to San Francisco. Clear skies, full flight, a new aircraft, a new crew, a new beginning. As she climbed into the cockpit, her first officer greeted her with a nervous but excited smile. First Officer Tasha Williams, she said, extending a hand. "It's an honor to fly with you, Captain." Maya smiled warmly. Likewise, Tasha was young, black, sharp, determined. She reminded Maya of herself years ago. The flight took off smoothly, cutting through early morning clouds as the sun rose above the horizon. "Beautiful day for flying," Maya said as they reached cruising altitude. "Perfect," Tasha agreed. After a pause, she added, "What you did at Meridian, that's the reason I didn't give up. People kept telling me this wasn't for me, but you proved it could be." Maya looked out at the endless sky. "The sky belongs to all of us, First Officer Williams. Never forget that." Maya's story spread far and wide. The Academy of Aviation Safety invited her to speak at their annual conference, a panel called "Changing Corporate Culture from the Inside Out." She stood at the podium, staring into a sea of faces: executives, engineers, regulators, pilots. Mostly men, mostly white, all watching. And she spoke from the heart. In aviation, the truth isn't just a virtue, it's a necessity. The sky forgives many things, but it never forgives lies. They stood, they clapped. But Maya wasn't interested in applause. She was interested in change. Atlantic followed through on its promises. They implemented a blind application process, stripping names and backgrounds from resumes to eliminate bias. They revamped safety reporting protocols, allowing anyone, mechanic, flight attendant, co-pilot, to file anonymous safety concerns without fear of retaliation. They created an independent oversight council with the authority to ground planes, even if it meant delays or lost profits. And across the industry, other airlines started doing the same, not out of kindness. Out of fear that Maya Daniels might be watching, Marcus Jefferson was hired as Atlantic's head of maintenance quality control. Lauren Kim began training to become a safety officer. James continued to rise through the ranks, now on track to become a captain within the year. Even Peter Lawson, once too afraid to speak up, reached out to say he'd joined a pilot mentorship program for underrepresented cadets. And Maya, she kept flying. One evening, as she finished logging a flight, she noticed something on the wall of the new operations center, a quote, framed in black and silver. Her words: "The sky doesn't care what color your hands are. It only cares that you fly with competence, courage, and integrity." She smiled, not for herself, but for what it meant. Change wasn't fast, but it was real. It had been months since the collapse of Meridian Airlines, but for Maya Daniels, the echoes of that fight still lived in every flight, every cockpit, every quiet moment before takeoff. She didn't talk about it much, not anymore. The world had already spoken enough for her. Interviews, headlines, panels, TED Talks, aviation blogs had declared her a trailblazer. Industry insiders called her the pilot who changed the sky. But Maya didn't need any of that. Her greatest reward came quietly, in moments most people wouldn't notice, like when a young pilot would spot her at the terminal and nod, just a nod, but one that held generations of recognition, or when she'd pass by a maintenance hangar and see techs double-checking things they used to skip, or when she'd walk into a cockpit and for the first time in her life feel seen. On the 5th anniversary of Meridian's collapse, Maya received an unexpected email. From Richard Whitmore, subject, "Thank you." She stared at it for a long time before opening it. "Captain Daniels, you may be surprised to hear from me. After much reflection during my community service sentence, I've come to recognize the harm caused by my actions and attitudes. While nothing can undo the past, I wanted you to know that your courage forced me to confront truths I had spent a lifetime avoiding. The aviation world is better because you refuse to be silenced. For whatever it's worth, I am sorry." Maya sat with the message, emotions swirling: anger, empathy, disbelief, grace. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't enough, but it was something. And sometimes a crack in the wall is the beginning of light. She typed her reply slowly. Apology accepted, Captain Whitmore. The sky belongs to all of us. Then she hit send and exhaled. She had kept the framed magazine cover someone had mailed her last year. The one that read, "The woman who grounded a giant," with a photo of her walking down a jetway in full uniform. She didn't hang it up, but she kept it, not for vanity, for the reminder that change is possible, that truth matters, that silence, no matter how comfortable, can be deadly. Maya's life had changed. She still flew, still wore those 4 gold stripes with quiet pride, but she also mentored young pilots from backgrounds like hers. She sat on panels, consulted for the FAA, helped rewrite safety protocols. She became the first Black woman to serve as president of operational safety at a major U.S. airline. And when she spoke, people listened, because she had lived it. One afternoon, after landing a flight from Chicago to Houston, Maya was walking through the terminal when she heard someone call out, "Captain Daniels." She turned to see a young woman, maybe early 20s, rushing toward her in uniform. Her Idaho badge read, "Simone Brooks, trainee pilot." I wanted to say thank you," Simone said, breathless. "I saw your story in school. It's why I'm here. People told me this wasn't my space, that it would never happen. But watching you, it changed everything." Maya smiled, placing a hand gently on the young woman's shoulder. "I'm proud of you. Keep going." "I will," Simone said, eyes bright with determination. And just like that, the legacy continued. Later that night, Maya got a text from Zoe: "Dinner tomorrow?" "I've got news." She replied instantly, "Your place." "I'll bring wine." Because even revolutionaries need sisters. The next morning, before her next flight, Maya passed through Atlantic's sleek new operations center. The walls were full of photos, now pilots of every background, mechanics, dispatchers, flight attendants, all grinning in their uniforms. Real diversity, not for show, for safety, for strength. One photo stopped her. It was of her, from that day 5 years ago, standing outside the briefing room after being told to wait. She looked different back then, not younger, just held in. The caption below read, "The moment before everything changed." Maya chuckled to herself. Damn right it did. Her next flight was long Chicago to Johannesburg. She loved that route, loved the long stretch of sky, the hours above the world, the silence that gave her space to think. Her first officer was a Nigerian woman named Aisha, confident, quick, funny. As they reached cruising altitude, Aisha glanced over and said, "You probably hear this a lot, but you being here, it makes everything feel possible." Maya nodded, eyes focused ahead. "I don't need to be the first," she said. "I just don't want to be the last." Back home that weekend, Zoe poured them both a glass of wine and grinned. "The FAA is forming a new permanent safety and ethics oversight board. They want you to chair it." Maya blinked. "Me?" they said, and I quote, "We need someone who's lived it, someone we trust." Maya looked out the window for a moment. The city lights flickered like stars. Planes glided silently in the distance. "Tell them I'll consider it." Because here's the truth, Maya Daniels never asked to be a hero. She just refused to wait outside. She refused to be silent. She refused to let systems built to keep people out continue without resistance. And because of that, the world shifted, however slightly, toward justice. The next time someone tried to clip a Black woman's wings, they'd have to reckon with the fact that one already took down an empire, and that she wasn't flying alone anymore. 3 months had passed since Maya Daniels had guided her first Atlantic Airways flight into the skies. But the tremors of what she set in motion, they were still moving through the industry like aftershocks from an earthquake. She didn't need front-page headlines to know it. She saw it in the way the flight crews carried themselves, alert, empowered, and more united than she'd ever seen before. She saw it in the newly instituted pre-flight crew feedback briefings, where even the youngest flight attendant, was encouraged to speak on safety concerns before a single wheel lifted off the tarmac. She saw it in her inbox. Every week, new messages came in from all over the country. From pilots, from mechanics, from students in flight schools in Detroit, Atlanta, Oakland. From women with natural hair and southern accents, from girls who never thought they'd be allowed in a cockpit. Because of you, I'm applying to flight school. Because of you, I didn't quit. Because of you, I know the sky is ours too. Maya read every single one. She replied to as many as she could. Sometimes the messages came with drawings from school-age kids' little stick figures in pilot hats, shaded brown with wide smiles, clouds all around them. Sometimes they came from people inside other airlines sharing quiet truths, hints of problems, asking for guidance. She wasn't just a captain anymore. She was a movement. Still, not everything had changed. One Tuesday morning, during a layover in Dallas, Maya sat at a breakfast spot near her gate when an older white man in a Delta uniform approached. He didn't smile. "Captain Daniels," he asked, "mind if I speak with you for a moment?" She looked up. "Depends on what you're here to say." He hesitated, then slid into the seat across from her. "I'm not here to pick a fight," he said, "but I do want to say you made things harder for some of us." Maya stared at him, waiting. He cleared his throat. "My crews, they walk on eggshells now. Everyone's afraid of saying the wrong thing. People whisper about audits like the boogeyman's coming. There's tension, you know." Maya leaned back slowly. "Tension," she echoed. He nodded. Maya sipped her coffee, set it down gently, then said, "If telling the truth makes your crews tense, then maybe they've been too comfortable lying." He blinked. She kept going. "If accountability feels like a threat, that's not my problem. That's your system talking." He opened his mouth, closed it, then gave a small nod, almost like he understood something, even if he didn't like it. Then he stood. "Good day, Captain, you too." Later that week, Maya received another message. This time, from the National Aviation Association, they were creating a new award in her name. The Captain Maya Daniels Integrity in Flight Award. It would be given annually to any aviation professional who demonstrated courage in the face of institutional pressure. At first, Maya didn't know how to feel about it. She didn't want a trophy. She didn't want to be a symbol on someone's diversity slide. But then she thought about Marcus, Lauren, James, Zoe, every voice that had risked something to stand beside her. Maybe the award wasn't just for her. Maybe it was for all of them. She accepted. Months turned into a year. The airline industry transformed slowly, but undeniably. Meridian's name disappeared completely, its last remaining assets absorbed or dissolved. Barrett and Whitmore faced real jail time. Wilson lost his pilot's license permanently. But the biggest shift was cultural. Flight schools began actively recruiting from HBCUs and urban programs. Airlines began hosting bias recognition training not as a formality, but as a conversation. Mechanics were given more power to report without going through political management channels. And the FAA, they were rewriting the handbook on whistleblower protections. And through it all, Maya kept flying. Flight 588 to Nairobi. Flight 777 to London. Flight 310 to Dallas. She stayed in the air not because she had to, but because she still loved it. The roar of takeoff. The silence above the clouds. The feeling of lifting something heavy and carrying it where it needed to go. Then one evening, just after touchdown, Maya found herself walking through a dim terminal hallway. Most of the passengers had gone. Her crew was packing up. She passed by a janitor's closet. The door cracked open. Inside, two young women in uniform stood talking. One of them was holding a flight log. The other a tablet. They didn't see her. But she paused, just out of sight, as the younger of the two spoke. And Captain Daniels said, "If something feels wrong, trust your gut. Speak up. Always." Maya smiled. Not a big grin. Just the quiet curve of a woman who knew her fight had mattered. Then she walked on. That same week, Maya was invited to speak at a graduation ceremony for a pilot training academy. She stood in front of 200 cadets, half of them women, a third of them black or brown, all of them bright-eyed and suited up. Her speech wasn't long. She looked out at them and said, "The sky doesn't ask who you are, but the people who guard the door to it often do. Don't let them make you smaller just to fit in the room. Don't whisper when the truth deserves volume. And never, ever let anyone convince you that being here is a favor. You earned this. Fly like it." The room stood, cheered, cried. But Maya, she just nodded once, then walked back out into the sunlight. The industry wasn't perfect. There were still battles to fight, still corners trying to be cut, still boardrooms full of people who valued profit over people. But there was also a new generation. Pilots who weren't afraid to speak, crews who had seen what silence cost, executives who were learning that sometimes the loudest voice in the room is the one that dares to tell the truth. And in the sky above, planes flew safer, better, fuller of purpose because one woman refused to wait outside. The days of being watched like a hawk, second-guessed at every turn, and underestimated with every breath were starting to fade behind Maya Daniels. Not entirely, but enough that she could walk into a flight briefing and feel respected instead of scrutinized. Enough that her name no longer triggered whispers, but nods of recognition. Enough that she could feel finally like she belonged in the very space she had to fight to stay in. Still, Maya never let herself forget how quickly things could slip backward, so she stayed sharp, stayed engaged, stayed grounded in the truth that even with progress, vigilance wasn't optional, it was necessary. At Atlantic Airways, the internal culture was shifting faster than Maya had expected. It started small. First, the anonymous pilot feedback portal was actually being acted on. Captains were being held accountable for behavior that, once upon a time, would have been brushed off as old school. And more than that, the airline began to publicly celebrate crew collaboration. Not just the pilot in command, but the entire team. It wasn't just about rank anymore. It was about trust, about listening, about creating a cockpit where everyone had a voice, not just a seat. Maya had never flown better. Then came the email. Subject, leadership opportunity, internal application. It was from Sarah Chen, Atlantic's chief pilot, and one of Maya's few true peers in the industry. A woman who knew what it meant to be the only one in the room and what it meant to carve out space for others. Captain Daniels, we are formally inviting you to apply for the role of Director of Flight Culture and Safety Innovation. You've shown us what it means to fly with courage and clarity. We believe you can lead others toward a culture where safety, diversity, and excellence aren't competing values but shared ones. No pressure, just an opportunity if you're ready. Sarah Maya sat with the message for a long time. She loved flying. It was in her bones. But maybe it was time to shape the air around her, not just move through it. Zoe has always had thoughts. You're already a symbol, she said over coffee. But this is legacy. You're not just influencing policy, you're becoming policy, Maya smirked. Is that your legal opinion or your sister one? Zoe shrugged. Same thing today. She paused. Seriously though, Maya, the industry's listening now. You have their attention. Use it while you've got it, Maya applied. And 2 weeks later, she was appointed as Atlantic's first ever Director of Flight Culture and Safety Innovation. She didn't give up flying completely. She negotiated to still log hours, but now she was also training new pilots, auditing internal culture across departments, and helping other airlines, yes, even competitors, build better systems. She wasn't hoarding knowledge. She was planting it. Everywhere. One of her first initiatives. The Daniels Mentorship Cohort. Twice a year, 10 young women of color and aviation pilots, engineers, maintenance trainees, dispatchers would be selected for a year-long paid mentorship, shadowing key roles, receiving coaching, and flying jumpseat on real reels. Applications poured in from across the globe. Maya sat on the panel to review them herself. Some made her laugh, some made her cry, but one video entry stopped her cold. A girl, maybe 17, sitting in a bedroom with posters of aircraft behind her. She looked straight into the camera. I want to be a pilot because of Captain Maya Daniels. I want to fly because she made the sky feel like it had room for me. Maya watched that clip 3 times before she could breathe again. Months passed. Then a year. Maya began speaking at international conferences. ICAO invited her to Geneva. NASA asked her to weigh in on next-gen pilot integration for commercial space travel. And everywhere she went, she carried the same message: safety isn't just mechanical. It's cultural. It's who we trust and who we listen to. It's whether people are empowered to speak before it's too late. She found herself flying less. But every time she stepped into the cockpit, it still felt like home. One evening, flying out of Los Angeles, her first officer was a young black woman named Denise. Fresh out of training, nervous as hell. Maya didn't lecture, didn't critique. She just turned to her and said, "Talk me through the departure sequence like you own it." Denise nodded, voice shaky at first, but with each step her confidence grew. When they reached cruising altitude, she looked over at Maya and whispered, "I never thought I'd be flying next to you." Maya smiled. "Well, get used to it. You're here now. Let's keep you here." But not every day was triumphant. Maya still faced pushback, subtle things, disguised questions about her credentials, passive-aggressive comments in high-level meetings, the occasional executive who called her aggressive for asking clear questions. She logged it all and addressed it all. Because now she had the platform to do so. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't need to. The weight of her presence was enough. One particular moment stayed with her. She was on a panel discussing the future of aviation safety when a former Meridian shareholder, now working as a consultant, posed a thinly veiled question. "Captain Daniels, do you think maybe the Meridian collapse was more about a few bad actors, not the system?" That maybe your response was too extreme. The room tensed. Maya took a sip of water, then looked the man dead in the eye. "The system protects the bad actors. And when people like me speak up, the system doesn't say thank you. It says you're too loud. If your bones are rotten, you don't bandage the skin. You rebuild." The room burst into applause. But Maya stayed calm because she wasn't there to be clapped for. She was there to tell the truth. That evening, she returned to her hotel room, exhausted but content. She kicked off her heels, let her hair down, and flopped onto the bed. Her phone buzzed. A text from Zoe saw the clip. "You killed it. Want me to send you the memes yet?" Maya laughed, typing back, "Not yet. I need 1 day of peace." But peace didn't last long, because the sky never sleeps, and neither does progress. Success has a way of shining a light not just on what's working, but on everything that's still broken. For all the progress Maya had helped ignite in the aviation world, not everyone was clapping. In fact, some were sharpening their knives behind the curtain. At first, it was Whisper's industry blog speculating on her motives, anonymous commenters questioning whether Maya was just leveraging controversy for clout. Then came the think pieces: has whistleblowing gone too far? Did Captain Daniels undermine trust in aviation? The cost of corporate transparency when exposure means instability, the irony. The same industry that had turned Azita into a symbol of change was now unsure what to do with the very change she created. Maya didn't flinch. She'd seen this before in different forms, under different names. The backlash against visibility, the backlash against voice, because it was one thing for a black woman to survive the system. It was another thing entirely for her to challenge it and win. She called Zoe one night, frustrated after a particularly loaded article accused her of dividing flight crews by making race a factor. "Let me guess," Zoe said, halfway through a bag of popcorn. "Written by someone who's never had to sit in silence while being disrespected." "Pretty much." "Maya, you shook the tree. Of course the snakes are going to fall out." "I didn't want to be anyone's hero," Maya muttered. "I just wanted things to be fair." "Safe. And they are safer," Zoe replied. "That's why they're mad. You moved the damn fence." Even internally, there were moments. In one high-level strategy meeting, an executive older white man, suit perfectly tailored, tossed out a line that nearly made Maya walk out. "We have to be careful," he said, not to make the cockpit too political. We don't want to scare off our traditional candidates. Maya leaned forward. With all due respect, she said, her voice steady, the cockpit has always been political. It's just been leaning one direction for decades. You're not losing candidates. You're making space for better ones. Silence. Then Sarah Chen, from the other side of the table, smiled and added, well said. The meeting moved on. So did Maya. To keep herself grounded, she made time for the things that reminded her who she was before all of this. She visited her old flight school in Michigan, talking to cadets who asked the same questions she once whispered to herself at night. Do I really belong here? What if I mess up once? Will they use it against me forever? How do I lead when no one looks like me? She told them the truth. You're going to be watched more, judged faster, held longer. But that's not a curse, it's a spotlight. And you get to decide what people see when it shines on you. At home, she started journaling again, something she hadn't done since her Air Force days. Not for publication, not for anyone else's eyes, just for herself, to process, to reflect, to breathe. Some nights she wrote about the fear, the doubt, the toll of being the one who stood up, the cost of walking through fire when others just moved around it. Other nights she wrote about joy, small, fleeting, necessary, a perfect landing, a moment of laughter with crew, a little girl in a boarding line staring at her with wide eyes and saying, "Mommy, she's the pilot." Those moments carried her. Then something unexpected happened. A woman showed up at one of her speaking events, sat in the back, didn't ask questions, just listened. Afterward, she approached Maya quietly. She looked to be in her late 50s, salt in her short hair, quiet confidence in her stance. "Captain Daniels," she said, "I wanted to introduce myself. My name is Elise Carr. I was the second black woman to earn a commercial pilot license in this state. Flew for over 20 years, but I left the industry after what it did to me." Maya blinked. Wait, Elise Carr, I've read about you. You just disappeared one day." "I didn't disappear," Elise said. "I got tired of screaming into locked doors." She looked Maya in the eye. "You kicked them off their hinges." Maya didn't know what to say. Elise smiled gently. "Just wanted you to know, some of us are still watching, and still proud." They hugged. No cameras, no stage, just two women generations apart, finally in the same room. That night, Maya stood by her window, wine in hand, watching planes move like stars across the sky. She thought about all the women like Elise, pioneers who were erased, all the women like herself fighting to stay, and all the women coming next who deserved more than a fight just to be heard. The next morning, she stepped into a simulator room at Atlantic's training facility. On the wall, a newly installed plaque. Captain Maya Daniels Simulator Wing, dedicated to those who refused to wait outside. She touched it gently before walking into the room. Inside, a group of young cadets, 4 women. 2 men stood waiting. Nervous, ready. Maya smiled. "All right, folks," she said. "Let's fly." There's a strange weight that comes with being called a pioneer. At first, it's empowering, even thrilling. But over time, it starts to shape expectations, yours and everyone else's. Maya Daniels had become a symbol of courage, integrity, and transformation in aviation. That much was clear. Her name was now shorthand for accountability in an industry that had long resisted change. But symbols don't get to be human. They don't get to have bad days, doubts, or quiet failures. And Maya was starting to feel that pressure deeply. It hit her hardest one evening after an exhausting long haul from Johannesburg. The flight had gone smoothly, professionally. No issues with the crew. No turbulence. But when she walked through the airport, still in uniform, she overheard 2 airline employees at a vending machine near baggage claim. They didn't see her as she passed. "I heard she's impossible to work with." "Well, when you bring down an airline, I guess you get to act like you're untouchable." Maya didn't stop. She didn't flinch. But it hit her in the gut. Not because it was true, but because it was inevitable. The world builds you up so it can tear you down. Especially when you look like her. She called Zoe that night. No pretense. I'm tired. Zoe's voice softened on the other end. Of what? Of holding up the whole damn sky by myself. There was a pause. You don't have to, Zoe said. Not anymore. Maya stared out the window. Sometimes it still feels like I do. Zoe's voice sharpened, just slightly. You didn't take down Meridian alone. You didn't change the FAA alone. You didn't mentor all those new pilots alone. You showed up. That was enough. Now let the others carry some of it too. Maya didn't respond right away, but those words stayed with her. A week later, she took a day off. No flights. No meetings. No press calls. Just Maya, her favorite coffee shop, and a thick paperback novel. She sat in the corner, hoodie pulled low, and let herself disappear for a little while. And for the first time in months, no one asked her for anything. It was exactly what she needed. But life, as always, didn't stay quiet for long. That same week, an incident broke the news cycle. A regional airline had experienced a near-miss landing after a junior pilot hesitated during final approach. The investigation revealed that the pilot, one of the first Afro-Latina women hired at that airline, had flagged a malfunction in training months earlier. Her concerns had been ignored. Now the same company was scrambling for cover. And the whispers started again. Is this what happens when we lower standards to be inclusive? We push too fast, too far. Maybe not everyone's meant to fly. Maya's blood boiled. Not just at the injustice, but at the weaponization of diversity itself. As if including more voices meant lowering the volume of safety. She requested to speak at the airline's upcoming safety summit, not as a critic, but as a reminder. They gave her 15 minutes on the schedule. She took 7. Standing in front of a room full of executives, regulators, and nervous PR staffers, she spoke plainly. Diversity isn't the threat here. Silence is. That pilot flagged a safety concern and no one listened. That's the failure, not her presence, not her race, not her courage. If you think someone being black or Latina or a woman in the cockpit is the risk, then you've never looked closely at the real cause of accidents. It's not color, it's culture. And culture starts with who you listen to. Then she walked off the stage. 7 minutes. The silence she left behind said more than any applause ever could. Afterward, the young pilot reached out privately. Her name was Adriana Torres. She asked to meet in person. Maya agreed. They sat in a quiet park outside of Denver, 2 pilots in plain clothes, no uniforms, no cameras. Adriana looked nervous but determined. I thought they were going to fire me, she said. And maybe they still will. But hearing you speak, it made me feel like I wasn't crazy. You weren't, Maya said. I kept thinking if I push too hard, they'll say I'm too aggressive. If I stay quiet, they'll say I'm not assertive enough. Maya nodded slowly. Welcome to the tightrope. But how do you stay? Like, how do you not just give up? Maya took a deep breath. You remember who you're flying for. Adriana looked confused. I'm not talking about the company, Maya said. I mean the passengers, the crew, the kid watching you from the terminal window. You don't fly for approval, you fly for impact. Adriana smiled. I needed that. We all do, Maya said softly. That night, Maya added a new line to her journal. I don't want to be the symbol. I want to be the support. It shifted something in her. She started stepping back from panels. Started turning down interviews that wanted to rehash the past instead of build the future. She focused on the work, on building safety systems, on mentoring pilots like Adriana, on rewriting the training protocols to include cultural awareness as a component of cockpit communication. And she asked Atlantic to fund a new initiative, Flight Path Forward, a scholarship and mentorship pipeline for underrepresented youth to enter aviation. They agreed and gave her full control. One morning, a student from the first Flight Path Forward class ran up to her in a hallway between simulator sessions. He was maybe 19, tall, bright eyes. He blurted out, Captain Daniels, I just wanted to say thank you. Maya smiled. What for? He grinned, a little sheepish. You made it okay for people like me to imagine ourselves up there. She looked at him for a long moment. then placed a hand on his shoulder. "You don't need permission to fly," she said. "Just the tools." That evening she called Zoe again. "I think I finally get it," Maya said. "Get what?" "Why it hurts so much to be seen as a symbol. Because symbols are cold. Untouchable." "But I'm not a statue." Zoe laughed. "You definitely aren't. I want to be the bridge," Maya said. "The one they walk across, not the pedestal they stare at." Zoe's voice softened. "You already are." By now, Maya Daniels had earned her place in the sky and on the ground. She was running a nationally funded mentorship program. She was consulting with the FAA and advising on aircraft safety reforms. She was flying commercial routes and teaching in simulators. But something unexpected happened as her influence spread. Resistance stopped hiding. It started with the internal newsletter at a major airline that Maya had never even worked for. A subtle piece ostensibly about changing aviation norms that veiled its disdain in carefully selected words. Not all traditions need disrupting. Sometimes excellence simply looks like consistency. A follow-up piece from an anonymous executive wrote, "Rapid inclusion efforts risk diluting the standards pilots have spent decades upholding." Maya wasn't named, but she didn't need to be. Everyone knew who they were talking about. Then came the emails. Not threats, nothing you could prosecute. But the tone was clear. "Captain Daniels, maybe stay in your lane. You've said enough. Let the system breathe. You're becoming more brand than pilot." Maya read them all, and she felt them. The pushback was louder than it had been in a while. But this time it wasn't reactionary. It was strategic, calculated, designed to make her second-guess herself, to erode her influence by chipping away at the public's perception, to make her seem too much. At first she considered pulling back. Less visibility, more quiet work. No more keynotes. No more panels. But then Zoe reminded her of something she'd said years ago during the Meridian hearings. "I don't raise my voice to be heard. I raise it so the quiet ones know they're not alone." Maya didn't need applause, but she refused to be erased, so she doubled down. At the next Flight Path Forward ceremony, Maya opened her remarks differently. No prepared speech, just a story. About her very first flight as a student pilot, how she stalled out in a Cessna 172 and panicked midair. How her instructor sat silently, watching, letting her flail for a full 10 seconds before calmly guiding her through the recovery. "I thought he was being cruel," she said to the audience of young black and brown cadets. "But I get it now. He was giving me the power to correct myself. Because flying like life isn't about being perfect. It's about trusting your own hand on the controls." She looked out at their faces, some wide-eyed, some skeptical, some hungry. "No one is going to give you this world. You have to fly toward it with everything you've got. And when they tell you you're too much, you look them dead in the eye and say, 'Not yet.'" After the ceremony, a girl no older than 16 approached her. She wore a second-hand blazer 2 sizes too big and sneaker-sized. Her name was Bria. "You think I can do this?" she asked. Maya didn't hesitate. "Yes, and more." Bria smiled, but her eyes stayed unsure. "I'm the only one in my family who even graduated high school. I've never even been on a plane." Maya leaned in. "Then the first one you get on, you fly it." Bria laughed through her nerves, and Maya thought, "This is why I stay visible. This is why I don't shrink." But visibility came with a cost. When Maya was invited to testify again before the House Subcommittee on Transportation Safety, she assumed it would be like last time, professional, procedural. It wasn't. This time, one particular congressman, middle-aged, blunt, proud of his resistance to wokeness, tried to corner her. "Captain Daniels," he said, "do you really believe pushing diversity initiatives into the cockpit makes us safer?" Maya didn't blink. "Yes." The room stirred. He leaned forward. "Even if that means giving positions to pilots with less flight experience." Maya answered calmly, "That's a false premise. We're not replacing experience. We're expanding opportunity. Inclusion doesn't mean incompetence. It means you finally looked beyond the people who look like you." The committee room got quiet. The congressman shifted in his seat. Maya didn't gloat. She just returned to her notes. After the hearing, a young congressional aide approached her. "I'm not supposed to say this," the woman whispered, glancing around, "but thank you. My mom was a flight attendant for 30 years. She never thought she'd see someone like you at that table." Maya just smiled. "Tell her I'm flying for her too." Back at Atlantic, Maya's presence continued to ripple. When she walked through the hangars now, people stood a little taller. Mechanics greeted her with respect. Dispatchers handed her detailed reports without defensiveness. Even among senior staff, there was a shift. Not perfect, but real. And one day she walked past a conference room where a safety meeting was in full swing and paused when she heard a pilot say, "Let's just Daniels this issue. Pull the data, get the truth. No spin." She froze. They were using her name as a verb. Daniels this, to seek truth, to investigate deeply, to fix what was unsafe no matter how uncomfortable. It didn't feel arrogant. It felt earned. That night, she wrote in her journal again, "Legacy isn't what you leave behind. It's what people do in your name when you're not in the room." Then, something extraordinary happened. NASA sent her a letter. They were preparing for a commercial lunar mission partnership. They were assembling a panel of aviation experts and spaceflight engineers to consult on flight culture and command integrity for multinational crews. And they wanted Maya, not for tokenism, for leadership, because if anyone knew how to fly between systems, between power and principle, between silence and truth, it was her. Zoe cried when she heard. "You realize what this means?" she asked. "Yeah," Maya said, laughing. "I'm going from Boeing to the moon." But more than that, she was showing a new generation of black girls that even the stars weren't out of reach. The idea of space had always been abstract to Maya Daniels. Not the physical kind she understood, lift, thrust, orbital velocity like second nature, but the space between moments, between who you were and who you're becoming. That's where she found herself now. Not just climbing altitude, but elevation. She was no longer only a pilot, not just a leader, not even just a movement. Now she was a bridge between air and space, between legacy and innovation, between earthbound systems and sky-bending futures. Her first visit to NASA's headquarters felt almost surreal. Jet engines she knew. Flight simulators, easy. But here she stood among engineers who sent people into space. Still, when she stepped into the meeting room filled with scientists, astronauts, and aviation historians, someone rose and said, "Captain Daniels, we've all read your safety models. Welcome aboard." She smiled, because even among rocket scientists, truth travels fast. The assignment was daunting but clear. As space tourism and commercial lunar flights became more viable, NASA needed help shaping crew culture. That meant building protocols for communication among diverse international teams, crisis response under psychological stress, ethical leadership during mission breakdowns, and ensuring safety without the hierarchy that often silenced crew members in legacy models. And Maya's approach, different from the engineers. She spoke plainly. Pilots don't fail because they lack skill. They fail when systems punish them for speaking up. She showed them Meridian. She showed them flight path forward. She showed them how inclusion wasn't a bonus, it was a barometer for whether people feel safe enough to act when it matters. NASA listened hard. During one closed-door session, she met Commander Erin Sato, a former test pilot turned astronaut. Cold eyes, clipped words sharp as a blade. At first, Erin was skeptical. "I'm not sure we need to re-engineer crew culture," she said. "We've been doing this for decades." Maya stayed calm, and yet every decade something breaks. Erin crossed her arms. "You think space crews will fall into the same traps as airline ones?" "No," Maya said. "I think they'll fall into new ones, unless we learn from the old ones now." There was silence. Then Erin nodded, just once, and Maya knew she'd won a quiet ally. Meanwhile, back at Atlantic, her absence was felt. Flight Path Forward continued, now run by a team of hand-picked instructors she'd personally trained. The Daniels mentorship cohort grew. New names, new faces, new energy. But what struck her most was how often she received messages that began with, "I didn't know I was allowed to want this until I saw you." Sometimes from women in their 50s, sometimes from men who had spent careers hiding their empathy behind procedure, sometimes from queer pilots who never dared show softness in the cockpit. Maya kept every message, printed some, taped them to a whiteboard in her home office under the heading, "Voices Worth Flying For." One day she received a call from Marcus Jefferson, still Atlantic's head of maintenance safety. Still quiet, steady, relentless in doing things right. "You free for lunch?" he asked. They met at a small diner near the original Meridian headquarters, now vacant, waiting to be redeveloped into a tech incubator. Marcus slid a file across the table. "Not urgent, but you'll want to see it." Inside, safety reports. This time from another major airline. Repeating patterns Maya had seen before. Loose oversight. Undocumented anomalies. Silence concerns. "They're hiding it better," Marcus said. "But it's happening again." Maya stared at the pages. "They're betting no one's watching." He nodded. "But they forgot one thing," he said. "You trained us to see it." That night, Maya wrote a single line in her journal. "The revolution doesn't end. It evolves." Later that month, she stood at Cape Canaveral, helmet in hand, as part of a training review for commercial spaceflight observers. She wasn't flying the shuttle, not yet, but she was part of the command simulation. And when the crew practiced a stage emergency, one of the younger mission leads froze. All eyes turned to Maya. She didn't shout, didn't take over. She leaned forward and asked one question: "Who's your gut telling you to trust right now?" The crew member pointed to their co-lead. "Then say it," Maya said. "Out loud, say what you need." And they did. Crisis averted. Simulation passed. Later, one of the astronauts said, "You taught them how to speak." That might have saved lives. Maya smiled. Not proud, just confirmed. The next week she flew a solo route again, short hop from Chicago to Minneapolis. No cameras, no students, no press, just Maya and the sky. And for a moment it was quiet. Not because the work was done, but because she knew it would never be just hers again. There were others now, in flight schools, on crew rosters, in hangars and boardrooms and moon launch rooms. She wasn't flying alone anymore. As the plane descended through clouds, she thought, legacy isn't being remembered. It's building something others remember how to continue. And in that sky between then and next, Maya Daniels flew on. It was supposed to be just another interview, one of dozens Maya had done over the years. A journalist from a major business magazine wanted to profile her again. She was hesitant. She'd told her story 100 times. The pilot who brought down Meridian, the symbol of ethical leadership, the advocate for equity in aviation. What more was there to say? But the journalist, a younger black woman named Dani, had been persistent. Her emails weren't flattering, they were honest. "You're no longer the exception. You're the blueprint. The world needs to hear how that shift feels." Maya said yes. They met in a quiet cafe near Maya's training facility. Dani brought no camera crew, no fanfare, just a notebook and a recorder. "Let's skip the obvious," she said. "I'm not here to retell your Wikipedia page. I want to talk about now, about what it means to be where you are, after what you've survived." Maya stirred her tea. "It means I don't flinch anymore, but I still notice every time someone tries to make me smaller." Dani leaned in. "You still feel that? Every day, just quieter now, more coded. People don't challenge your resume anymore. They challenge your tone, your presence, your pace. But it's the same thing, it's containment." Dani nodded. "You said once that you didn't want to be a symbol. You wanted to be support. Have you found that balance?" Maya thought for a moment. "Yes. And no. I'm learning that being the support is symbolic now. And that's okay. As long as I'm not the only one holding the weight." The article was published a month later under the title, "The Pilot Who Refused to Land Quietly." It didn't go viral, it didn't trend, but it mattered, because that piece wasn't just about Maya. It was about the shift she'd created, the ripple of voices rising in her wake. Cadets at Air Force academies printed it out and pinned it to dorm walls. Professors assigned it in leadership courses. Mechanics who had once kept their heads down started submitting formal safety concerns with Maya's story cited as inspired. The effect wasn't loud. It was permanent. Then came an unexpected call. Not from the FAA, not from NASA, but from the White House. The administration was forming a National Advisory Council on Workforce Integrity and Industry Culture, focused on transforming environments where systemic silence had endangered lives: aviation, healthcare, law enforcement, tech. They wanted Maya to chair it. The offer came with a warning: this won't be easy. You'll face politicians who resent you, executives who fear you, and lobbyists who will do everything they can to discredit your findings. Maya smiled. Sounds familiar. She accepted. Her first council meeting took place inside a secure conference hall in D.C., surrounded by leaders in every major industry, many of whom had never worked with a black woman, let alone reported to one. Maya didn't start with a speech. She started with a question. When was the last time someone at the bottom of your company felt safe enough to tell you the truth? Silence. She let it sit, then added, if you don't know the answer, or worse, if you assume they feel safe, that's where your real crisis lies. Some shifted in their seats. A few took notes. Most just listened. But the tone was set. She wasn't here to comfort power. She was here to reel in it. That evening, walking out of the Capitol, Maya stood on the steps and looked at the skyline. The buildings, the monuments, all built by hands that had once been denied access to the very systems they built. And now she was part of rebuilding them, not as an outsider, but as an architect. Meanwhile, her work with NASA expanded. She wasn't just reviewing flight culture anymore. She was now leading the development of a new crew command ethics protocol for deep space missions that would take place over years, not hours. She was designing systems for empathy under pressure, for communication without ego, for equity when survival was communal. One of the astronauts said during training, "This might be the most important manual since the first shuttle launch." Maya didn't beam with pride. She nodded. "Only if we use it," she replied. Back home, Zoe had started writing again. Not briefs, not legal memos, but a book. It was called Waiting Outside, A Sister's View of Revolution at 30,000 Feet. It wasn't just about Maya. It was about watching someone you love risk everything for a system that barely acknowledged them and what it means to stay in that fight beside them. Maya cried reading the first draft. Zoe handed her tissues and said, "You taught me that not all doors have to be kicked in. Some just need a voice on the other side saying you belong." Maya's days became longer. Her inbox heavier, her shoulders too sometimes. But the burden was shared now. Adriana Torres had become a training captain. Bria, the teen with the oversized blazer, was now in her first year of commercial pilot's training. Elise Carr, she'd come out of retirement and joined the board of Flight Path Forward. Everywhere Maya looked, the system was still fighting her. But now it was fighting a network, a community, a rising fleet. And then, as if life needed one final poetic full circle, Maya received a formal invitation. Harvard University, to deliver the 2025 commencement address. The first time a commercial airline pilot had been asked. The first time a black woman from outside politics, tech, or entertainment had taken that steam. The email read, "We believe your voice is exactly what this moment in history requires." Maya stared at the screen for a long time, then typed confirmed. The morning of the commencement address, the sky over Cambridge was soft and grey, as if the clouds were holding their breath. Maya Daniels stood backstage at Harvard Yard in a fitted navy suit, her pilot's wings pinned proudly to her lapel. She didn't wear robes, didn't ask for honorary degrees. She wasn't there to become part of the club. She was there to speak to the people standing just outside its doors. To the kids who didn't come from legacy. To the students who wondered if they belonged, even as they held diplomas. To the ones who'd been told directly or indirectly to wait outside. Her speech wasn't about airplanes, it was about resistance and voice and thresholds. When Maya stepped up to the podium, a sea of faces looked back at her, diverse, electric, reverent. The applause was thunderous, but she didn't soak it in. She waited, let it settle. Then spoke. I once spent 20 minutes waiting in a hallway outside a flight briefing room while men I'd trained harder than decided if I was worthy to sit at the table. I was a decorated pilot, a military vet, a woman who'd flown through sandstorms, crosswinds, and war zones. But on that day, none of that mattered. What mattered was perception, comfort, tradition. And tradition told them I didn't look like a captain. A murmur ran through the crowd. But here's what they didn't understand. I wasn't there for permission. I was there because I'd already earned my place. And I didn't wait outside because I lacked courage. I waited because I was choosing my moment. A pause. And when that moment came, I walked in, not with rage, not with vengeance, with receipts, with evidence, with clarity, and with the names of everyone who had been silenced before me. The crowd held its breath. Graduates, you are stepping into a world that will hand you titles but deny you access. You will sit in meetings where your ideas get repeated louder by someone else and suddenly become brilliant. You'll hear wait your turn when what they mean is don't disrupt our comfort, and you'll be tempted, deeply tempted to shrink, to smooth your edges, to quiet your meches so you can belong. She looked across the sea of gowns. Don't. You weren't made to decorate the room. You were made to rearrange it. Don't aim to fit the job. Reshape the job so it fits the future. Scattered applause began to ripple, but Maya held them in silence again. Because here's the truth no one tells you at schools like this, right? Sometimes it looks like showing up. Sometimes it looks like saying, actually, no, that's not safe. Sometimes it looks like mentoring someone who reminds you of you. And sometimes it looks like flying a plane while the world watches, waiting for you to fail only to land it flawlessly, with grace. A swell of clapping now, standing, shouting, cheering. But she wasn't done. When they tell you you're lucky to be here, remind them you're qualified. When they call you emotional, know they mean human. When they say you're too much, remember you are too brilliant, too relentless, too necessary to be erased. Now they stood, thousands of them, and Maya just smiled, because that wasn't for her. That was for every soul who'd ever stood in a hallway wondering if they'd ever be invited in. That night, Zoe hosted a dinner at her place. Just family, a few close friends, no reporters. After dessert, someone raised a toast to Maya, to revolution with wings. She laughed. I'm just a pilot. No, Zoe said, smiling, you're the path. In the days that followed, letters and emails poured in. Not from politicians or CEOs, but from cafeteria workers, air traffic controllers, mid-career mothers going back to school, flight attendants who'd been overlooked for promotions. One said, you reminded me that visibility isn't vanity, it's survival. Another read, I walked into my first engineering job with your words in my head. I didn't flinch. I didn't fold. And I didn't wait outside. Back at Atlantic, a quiet moment came. A new plaque had been added to the central crew hall. It read, the Daniel Standard, a culture of courage. A legacy of truth. No fanfare. No press release. Just a permanent reminder. That one voice can change the altitude of an entire system. Time has a way of folding in on itself. One day you're a trainee in borrowed boots, gripping your first yoke, hands shaking. The next you're standing at the edge of Earth's atmosphere, watching the blue curve of the planet turn to black. That's where Maya found herself now, not metaphorically, literally. She had been invited to observe from the command center of a test orbit, a precursor mission for the first commercial flight to a lunar outpost. She wasn't flying the spacecraft. She wasn't giving the orders, but everyone in the room knew nothing about this mission's human design would exist without her. Maya watched the launch from inside a control room thick with tension. Rows of engineers and mission specialists sat with fingers poised, listening for updates. In one corner, Erin Sato, now the chief astronaut advisor, stood beside Maya. You nervous? Erin asked. About the rocket? No, Maya replied. About what happens if we forget the lessons before this moment? Absolutely. Erin gave a half smile. We won't. And Maya believed her, because this time she hadn't just rewritten a handbook. She had shaped a mindset, one where power and caution coexisted, one where the quietest person in the room had the right to speak first. The launch was smooth, the orbit successful, and 3 days later, Maya received a message from the crew commander aboard the capsule. We implemented the Daniels protocol during the communications delay with ground. The system failed, but the culture held. Everyone contributed. No panic. We kept flying. That was it. That was the entire reward. Not a medal, not a headline, just confirmation that her work worked. Back on Earth, Maya continued to build. She helped launch an international network of safety whistleblowers and advocates, flight crew, medics, teachers, miners, anyone human whose workplace safety had been ignored by those in power. It wasn't about exposing people. It was about protecting them. It was called Altitude, and within 6 months, it had members in 19 countries. One of the first initiatives, a hotline where people could anonymously report institutional negligence monitored by a board of cross-sector advisors. People like Maya, people who didn't flinch. One evening, Maya hosted a small dinner with her mentorship cohort. Over curry and cornbread, they shared stories from the sky. Ariana had just completed her check ride as captain. Bria was weeks from graduating and had already lined up job interviews. Denise, her first co-pilot at Atlantic, was now training others. I almost walked away last year, Bria admitted. It just got too heavy. Too much pressure to be perfect. Maya nodded. You don't have to be perfect. Just present. They talked late into the night, laughing, crying, planning. It felt like something sacred, like a circle being completed. Meanwhile, industry giants continued trying to catch up to the future Maya had already sketched. Airline execs who once dismissed her were now quoting her in speeches. Flight schools across the country used her story as a case study. A new documentary titled Wingspan, The Maya Daniels Effect, premiered at Sundance. She went, sat in the back row, watched strangers tell a version of her story she'd once been terrified to live out loud. Afterwards, someone asked her how it felt. She smiled. It's weird, she said, being studied while you're still mid-flight. That same month, NASA delivered a box to her doorstep. Inside was a silver medallion. On one side, her name. On the other, the inscription to the one who taught us how to land with integrity. She placed it on a shelf beside her original flight school certificate. One beginning, one continuation, no end. She kept flying. Not every week, not for hours on end, but enough. Enough to stay connected to the reason it all started. One flight, a father and daughter approached her at the gate. The girl, maybe 11, wore a backpack covered in patches. She wants to be a pilot, the father said. Told me she'd only fly on planes captained by women. Maya crouched to her level. You know the best thing about being a pilot? The girl's eyes lit up. What? You get to decide how high you go. That night, Maya added one final photo to her vision wall. A Polaroid taken decades ago, her first solo flight. Smudged, crooked, glorious. Next to it, she scribbled a note on a post-it, not done. Just getting altitude. The sky was clear. No turbulence, no crosswinds, just an endless stretch of soft blue, like the universe exhaling. Maya Daniels sat in the left seat of a Boeing 787, cruising at 36,000 feet, her hands relaxed on the yoke. It was a ceremonial flight, not publicized, not televised, but significant because it would be her last as a full-time commercial pilot. Not because she was tired, not because the fire had gone out, but because the next season of her life needed both feet on the ground, and she was ready. The flight path was simple, Chicago to Oakland, the same route she'd taken when she first wore the Meridian uniform. Except this time there was no suppression in her stride, no waiting in the hallway, no rooms where her voice wasn't welcome. She belonged everywhere now, not because they allowed her, because she built the spaces herself. James Chen, now a senior captain himself, rode as first officer, their first time flying together in years. "Feels poetic," he said, checking the gauges. "You bringing us in one last time." Maya grinned. "You act like I'm dying." "I'll still fly, you just won't see me do it every week." "You earned this," he said softly. "Not just the wings, the legacy." She didn't answer right away, just stared out at the sky that had raised her. Then she whispered, "It raised a lot of us." They landed smoothly. Textbook. The cabin erupted in applause, though most passengers didn't know it was her last flight. They clapped because she flew it like she always did, with grace, steadiness, and presence. Maya stood in the cockpit door as passengers disembarked. One woman stopped, looked at her wings, then back at her face. "You're her, aren't you?" Maya smiled. "Depends on who you mean. The one who changed everything." Maya shook her head. "No," she said. "I just started something." Outside the gate, a small group of former mentees stood waiting with flowers. Bria, Denise, Adriana, even Elise Carr, they hugged her tightly. No fanfare, no speech, just gratitude. In the months that followed, Maya transitioned fully into her leadership work, building out the Altitude Network, co-authoring the Global Ethics in Aviation Culture Act, and consulting on planetary habitation protocols for future space colonization. Her reach extended far beyond runways, but she never stopped teaching, never stopped mentoring, never stopped telling the truth, no matter how uncomfortable it made people with power. And years later, when a young girl 6 years old, hair in puffs, boarding her very first flight, looked up at the cockpit and saw a black woman in command, she didn't blink. She didn't question. She didn't ask if that was rare. She just said, "That's what pilots look like." That was Maya Daniels' real victory. Not the headlines, not the medals, not even the policies, but the quiet, permanent rewriting of what was possible. She didn't just break a ceiling. She redefined the sky. On her 60th birthday, Maya walked alone onto the tarmac of a small regional airfield. The sun was setting. A private propeller plane waited, already warmed up, her flight log still pristine. Her hands still steady, she took off into the golden light. No passengers, no crew, just her, the yoke, and the hum of freedom. As she climbed higher past the clouds, past the noise, past even her own story, she whispered to herself, still flying. And she was, forever.